Welcome to Magical Monday Live. I am your hostess, Ivy, and today we are going to talk about being part of a coven, which is very exciting to me because it's something I like to talk about. So I don't even really have much of any. Usually I come with an outline and things I want to make sure I cover, and not today. I just feel like I could probably blather for a while about being in a coven. So when you come on, say hello. Hi, Phoebe. If you're on my friends list, I'll see you whether you say hello or not. Hi, Phoebe. Just going to wait just a couple moments. Now I'm on a little bit later. As it happens when you have to do errands after work. It messes your whole thing up. But it didn't mess up the fact that, like, I got my wine before I came on. Did it? Okay. So, all right. So today I'm going to talk about being part of a coven. If you have any cool stories that you want to share, feel free to post them in the comments. I really am interested in learning and listening to your stories about what it was like for you when you either joined a coven or you petitioned to join a coven or you met with coven people. Whether it's good or whether it's bad, I'm super interested in learning about your experiences. So why am I even talking about this? So first of all, I'm Ivy, and I am a high priestess. I've been a high priestess of the same coven since 2004. So that's about 15 years. Yeah, I guess it's 15 years this year. So I am Coven. Jeez Louise. I'm sorry. It's been a long day. It's a Monday. And Mercury's in retrograde. So I'm sure you can cut me some slack today. So I've been the high priestess of Temple Sophia in all of its incarnations for about 15 years. We started out as Coven of the Twilight Moon, and then we had a hive and changed our name to Twilight Spiral Coven. And now we're kind of changing what we want to do. And now we are called Temple Sophia. But it's been basically the same coven. People have come and gone, but I've been around here doing the same thing for 15 years. Prior to that, I was a high priestess of another coven. I tried to join a coven and ended up being voted in as high priestess after the high priestess couldn't hang. She had mental illness and her medication wasn't allowing her to live her life like she would like. So she had to, she rethought her priorities, and she's like, "You're a high priestess now." I'm like, "Let's take a vote." And they voted me in anyway. So I'll talk a little bit about why that sort of thing doesn't work in a second. But and before that, I actually started an online coven that functioned as a regular coven, not just hey, I have a Yahoo group or a Facebook group and I call it a coven. So that's kind of my background and why I feel like I am qualified to talk about being in a coven. So let's start out by defining what even is a coven. So it's very simple. A coven is 3 or more people practicing witchcraft together. The end. There's no rules. Every coven is autonomous. So, if you just want to get together once a month with your 2 friends to practice witchcraft, whatever that is to you, you want to call yourself a coven, super awesome. You totally do that. If you want to create bylaws and and incorporate or have a website or teach other people or bring other people in, that also can be a coven. So that is basically the definition. It's really open-ended. So there are a couple, I say so 5,000 times. So there are a bunch of misconceptions about being in a coven. And I'm really feeling like the biggest misconception is that you are either a coven witch or a solitary witch. That by far is the biggest misconception, I think. If you are part of a coven, most of the time, and I would hope, you are expected to continue to have your personal practice. And by your personal practice, I mean whatever your solitary practice is. So sure, You might go to SBOT, full moon rituals, or new moon rituals, or whatever kind of moon rituals your coven does, and Sabbath rituals and meetings. Maybe, it all depends on the kind of coven that you're part of. But that doesn't mean like the end, like that's your whole spiritual life now is just in this box of coven. That's not really how it works, because you might feel called to a goddess that your coven doesn't honor, or you might, you will probably have your own personal practice, whether that looks like deity devotions or meditation or visualization or, your own spells. Just because you might do a spell in, as a coven at full moon does not mean that like you can't do your own prosperity workings and, you can't do your own stuff. Now, here's a caveat. I'm talking about like a coven where there's transparency and it's like a healthy group. I have heard of other covens, even locally. Excuse me, allergies are murdering me today. Where, if you are dedicated or part of that coven, you are not allowed to go to another coven's open festivities or ritual without if the entire coven is not allowed to be invited. So, for example, my coven, sometimes we do open events where we invite friends and family. I invited somebody once and they said, "Oh, I'm sorry, unless you invite my entire coven, I can't come." Personally, I don't feel like that is super healthy. I feel like that I completely encourage my coven mates to go out and experience every public thing, every open thing, do all of the things, because when you go out and you experience somebody else's ritual, or you experience somebody's celebration, whatever that might possibly be, or somebody's class, you learn a lot. Hi, Katie. You learn a lot, and then you can bring that back, and maybe you'll grasp onto a concept that you want to bring into the coven, or you want to talk about maybe doing a ritual a different way, etc. So most covens, you're expected to have like some sort of your own personal path. So I really feel like that is the biggest misconception. And I think it's really important that you have a personal path. I think that it is not healthy for you to join a coven and then they try to control everything that you do, because that is like culty behavior, and you don't want to join a cult. You want to join a lovely coven that will help you learn and grow. There are several different types. Hi, Giselle. Giselle is one of my coven sisters. There are several different types of covens. The coven that I'm in, it's hierarchical, which means there's a high priestess and a maiden, and there are degrees. Now, does that mean that it's the high priestess show, and the high priestess makes all the decisions and all of those things? That's not how my personal coven works. That's not how my personal coven works. So yes, I am high priestess. Yes, I will make a decision if it's necessary. But for the most part, we all kind of discuss everything. So if we're like, okay, we're going to plan, let's say, in a start ritual. So we talk about, we all kind of bring ideas and we talk it out, we make a decision. I mean, the 5 of us that are in the inner court of my coven, we've been working together for like a really long time. So it doesn't take very long to plan anything. But it's not like I make all of the decisions. And so hopefully, if you are interested in joining a coven and there's a high priestess and all that, a lot of people are afraid of that authority figure thing. And I'm not going to say that there aren't covens where it's like the high priestess is, the queen and everybody bows down to them. I'm not really saying like it's a terrible thing. It's a good thing to have respect for people who are taking the time out to teach you and to, especially when you're learning or when you're dedicating or you're petitioning to a coven. It's really important that you respect the time and the energy that your coven leaders and even your coven initiate, the coven initiates are doing, because they're putting in a lot of time to teach you. Usually, if not free of charge, then super cheaply. So I forgot what I was saying, but it's really, it should not be like the high priestess rules the roost, in my opinion. And that is something that scares a lot of people away, because many people come to this witchcraft path because of the autonomy, because they may have had a bad experience in a Christian or Catholic church where they don't want to have to like listen to another person. And that's understandable. But I have to say, like, working within a coven is unlike anything that you will ever have as solitary. And I'm not saying that like coven is better than solitary. Obviously I'm not, because I just said they work hand in hand. Both things are awesome. And it doesn't mean you need to join some fancy, huge coven either. But if you want to work, if you meet another witch and you want to work together, the experience that you'll have, especially in regards to generating energy and raising energy and spell working, I mean, it's a very different dynamic, and you'll actually be able to like feel it in your body. So there's that hierarchical coven, like I said, with different degrees and a high priestess and maybe a high priest and this and that. There's also an egalitarian coven where you have a bunch of people and everybody, you always come to consensus, and there is nobody who makes a final decision. You discuss everything until everybody agrees, which I think is great. And that's kind of, for the most part, how my coven works, even though we're hierarchical. But like, if nobody's making a decision and we've been talking about something for an hour, a decision needs to be made. And that's kind of where I would step in. Although I have not had to do that. The only time I feel like I've really kind of stepped in and like making a decision is where to place tables at Pagan Pride Day. Literally. Because there's usually like, we can't figure out where we're going to put our tables for our vending. But so those are like the two main types of covens, the way that they're governed, at least. So I do want to talk quickly about online covens. I started in an online coven. Hi, Mirakel. I started an online coven. That's kind of where I started. I wanted to meet new people, even if it was online. It was like the late 90s. And the internet was like finally becoming an actual thing. So I started a coven online where we met at specific times, and we did online rituals in specific ways. And this is before we had all the video, so most of it was in chat. And even there, like, we did powerful rituals, especially like a powerful healing ritual for one of those sisters' kids that was like really, really super sick. Like, we did a very powerful online healing ritual, and she was much better by the end of our ritual. So online covens, if you're interested in joining an online coven, that is a thing. But like, not every Yahoo group or Facebook group that calls themselves a coven is really a coven, because it really is about practicing together. Okay. And again, if you have any questions about being in a coven or whatever, like, please feel free to post them in the comments, because I will answer all of the questions. Also, some covens are teaching covens where they will teach you from the beginning all the witchcraft stuff. So like candle magic and color correspondences and everything you wanted to know, you can learn as part of a teaching coven. And then there are also covens that kind of expect you to know things already. So if you are looking for a coven, if you're interested in joining a coven, that's something that you're really going to want to think about when it comes to what kind of coven you want to join. Do you want to join a coven where it's primarily focused on workings and just doing the work? Or are you interested in joining a coven where you can help like new witches kind of come into their power? My coven personally is kind of a little bit of both. We do teaching. I'm actually working on our new curriculum, because as everything's kind of changed, so our curriculum will change. But prior to that, I taught something that is very similar to my independent witch program, where you learn how to like be a witch for your own self. You learn how to write your own evocations and create your own rituals and your own spell work. So these are a couple things that you probably want to think about a little bit when you're thinking about joining a coven. Now, there are about 5,000 different, like probably more than that, different belief systems and different gods to honor and different ritual styles and just everything that comes along with all of those things. There are so many different kinds. Like, but there might be only 2 covens in your neck of the woods, right? There are 2 covens, let's say, in your area. Do you want to join, even if it's not perfect? Even if it doesn't perfectly align with what you're doing? So maybe you're like, okay, yeah, cool. The Norse gods are cool, but like, I don't really want to join a coven that's all about Freya. Or I'm into Greek gods, but I don't want to join a Hellenic coven. That's too much for me. But the thing is, the most important thing when you're looking for a coven, if you're thinking about, where you might want to join, is fit. It has nothing to do with, I mean, at some point it is going to have to do with, like, you have to kind of be on board with their beliefs and their practices and this and that. But it's all about your energetic fit. So if you go to like a meet and greet and you're like, these people are freaking out of their mind, because some people are, or you're like, ooh, they give me a bad vibe, or I don't think this is for me, then do not go any further, because you're going to literally kind of be working your energy, weaving that in with these other people's energy. And if they're yuck, you don't want to be part of that. So even if they honor the same gods as you do, and they have the same, they have the same kind of ritual outline, they do the same practices as you, if their energy, if you feel at any point like that's not for you, then that's when you leave. The most important thing is fit. So if, like, for example, in my coven, like prior to, like right now, we recently made a shift, but prior to that, we were definitely a Wiccan coven. We honored the goddess and the god. We honored the wheel of the year, as the Wiccan wheel, like Ostara and Beltane and Litha and Lunasa and all that stuff. So the cool thing was, like, even if you could get on board with these like similar practices, you're good to go, because we're not going to restrict your personal practices. And at some point, you're going to be able to honor your own gods, or we're going to do something that is going to align with you, at least in my group. Because in my group, like, we take turns, like, we're all kind of equal, sort of, and we take turns honoring, we take turns like centering S-spots, and we take turns creating the ritual liturgy for Sabbats. Like, so it's a total, so you're completely involved the whole process. So if you can kind of get on board with some of that, then you are good to go, because at some point, you can ask, I'm interested in Norse gods. Do you ever do anything with them? And if they say yes, that's cool. Or if they say no, but like that's something we're interested in, we'd be open to, that's something you might want to think about. But if they're like, no, we hate everything about that, that obviously would not be a good fit. Okay. So Katie asks, how would you do that politely? Like, leave it if it's not a good fit. Well, first of all, you will probably learn pretty quickly whether it's a good fit for you or not. Most covens do some sort of meet and greet or like interviews, kind of. Most covens won't just accept every single person who knocks on their door. And that is a smart process. So the coven I joined before I started my coven, it was like that. Everybody who wanted to join could join. And the high priestess was like, we'll figure it out. We'll figure out what we're going to do. Everybody wants to practice. And it ended up being like 15 people or something. And it was like the only coven kind of close, sort of near to my area at all. And so I drove into the South Bay from Orange County. And the problem was they accepted everybody. And not everybody had the same expectations. Some people wanted classes. Some people thought everybody should already know things. Some people did not want to, like, practice on the full moon. Some people wanted to do everything on the weekend. Some people had, like, there were so many things happening. Nobody really fit in because there was no actual place to fit, if that makes any sense. So there wasn't really any like meet and greet. There was no like onboarding process. There was nothing like that. So if you join a coven and they don't have an onboarding process and they don't there aren't student classes where you can dedicate, but you're not initiated for 6 months or a year or whatever. The reason why people have that dedication process is to make sure that it is going to be a good fit. Now, this does not mean that you are going to love every single person in the coven, or you're going to agree with something, every thing that somebody says, because I'll tell you, there are a lot of things that people believe and say in my coven, not a lot of things, but there are some things that I disagree with, and that's fine. Like, I can still love my coven sister. I mean, I'm sure you know what I mean? Like, I'm sure you have people that you disagree with, but that doesn't mean we're not a good fit. Now, if you like join a coven and they're like obviously not a good fit, you just, if you have a mature coven leader who has done this and is emotionally mature, and you say, you know what, this really isn't for me, this isn't a good fit, I'm going to take my leave, I really thank you. Make sure you thank them, because coven leaders and like coven initiates and anybody who's doing anything in a coven is working really hard. They are writing ritual, they are buying things, they are preparing the ritual space, they're buying lights and candles and making incense or buying incense. And, so the best way to leave a situation like that is just to be appreciative, just show your gratitude, say thank you very much, I wish you well, and say, it's just really not a good fit for me right now, but I'd really like to keep in touch with you. That's it. Are you going to have crazy people who get mad at you? Probably sometimes, because there are like some people who are not emotionally mature. There are some high priestesses that have read 2 books and come in and like are driven by ego instead of driven by purpose, if that makes sense. So if you are thinking about joining a coven and that high priestess is driven by ego, they might get mad. I've had to tell dedicants, like, this is not working, this is not a good fit. Now, if you think it's hard to tell a high priestess or like your coven people, like it's hard, that it's not a good fit, like telling a student who's come to 10 classes that it's not a good fit, it was bad. I called her on the phone because we were not close geographically, and we had a conversation, and she was mad because she put in some work. Like, we both put in work, but she was super mad. But I heard from her about 6 years later, and she said, I'm really glad that you did that. It really actually set me on a different path, and it, whatever. It ended up being great. But you might have somebody who throws a hissy fit. But honestly, do you want to work with people who feel like it's not a good fit? No, you wouldn't. It's silly. So you want everybody to want to be there. And that's another thing about a coven. If you are a bad coven leader, and then people will leave. People vote with their feet. So, I mean, that's pretty much it. Like, you can just leave. You are not like blood sisters forever. I mean, maybe I would not suggest doing that, but you have the opportunity to leave at any time. Do you feel unsafe? Then leave. But that doesn't mean don't be a good communicator with a coven leader. All right. So let's talk about how to find like-minded people. So there are a lot of different ways to find like-minded people. I'm going to go ahead and I wrote a little blog. Give me a second. I'm going to just post a link here. All right. So so in the comments, I posted a link about how to find other witches and other pagans. There, if you click on it, it will give you some actual like links, like Meetup and Yahoo groups and Facebook groups and things like that can help you network and find other like-minded people or other witches. Now, this doesn't mean you have to create a formal coven, but it is nice to sit down and have an Ostara dinner or an Ostara brunch, or even just go out to brunch with your witchy friends and have, be like, this is our Ostara brunch. Excuse me. So there are a lot of different ways to find like-minded people, especially with Facebook groups. There are, for most, I guess, regions, there are a lot of regional pagan groups. So if you're interested in working with other people, or at least just meeting up with other people, look into that. Look into other Facebook groups. There's also Meetup. There are many like pagan meetup groups and Yahoo groups, and Covenant of the Goddess, which is an association that has several chapters, like local chapters. Most of the time they can direct you to a coven. I know I'm not part of our local Covenant of the Goddess. Like my coven is not part of that. But I still had the local coordinator reach out to me saying, hey, we have somebody who might be interested in your coven. So that is a good place to start. And if you click on that blog post, there are links. Okay. So are there any other questions about joining a coven, being part of a coven, anything like that? Post them in the comments and I'll answer any questions. Like I'll answer the good, the bad, the ugly. So before I started my coven, so let me tell you how I started my coven. And I started my coven, and you can also start a coven. I'm not going to tell you need to be trained by like a 15-year grand magus. Like that's not really how it works. One of the mini courses I am working on, I'm working on 2 mini courses right now. One is the herbal magic course, and one is called Visioning Your Circle of Sisters. And that course is going to be about the initial phase creation, the initial creation phase of creating your own group. And that could be like a coven, it could be like a red tent. So I'm working on that. I also have a one-on-one intensive 6-month high priestess training, which is based on the high priestess training that I do that I've done in my groups past. But it's harder if you don't have any sort of training or any of that, but you can certainly create your own group. So after coming off of the group where I ended up being voted high priestess, and then everybody, like nobody, I planned 2 rituals and nobody showed up, I was done because it's hard. It's a lot of work. So I decided to start my own coven, and from there, and I hadn't done a whole lot of group work. I just stepped into that high priestess role. And although I'd had a lot of leadership, if you have had a lot of leadership experience, whether that's in school or college or your work, if you're a manager at work and you've done all of these like leadership trainings, you are already ahead of the game. So when I started my coven, I created bylaws, I got everything ready, and then I just launched my coven, and a bunch of people came and wanted to join because there was no other coven locally for me to join. So I put it out there that I was going to create a coven, and I had like 8 people, which is a lot of people. So like the traditional number of coven members is 13, and that is a very large dynamic to manage. In my opinion, I feel like the ideal coven is like anywhere from 5 to 8. That's my personal opinion. But you can totally create your own group. You don't have to wait for somebody to give you permission. Like I give you permission to start your own group, whether that's a coven or a grove or a circle or a study group or a book club or whatever that is. Like if you want to reach out and meet other people, do that. You can do that. Like Facebook is free. It's magical. You've got sisters in here. You can look in all these other groups. Look in your geographical groups. So Katie asks, how much time can I expect to put in? So this varies from group to group. In my group, like attendance is not optional. Because you are creating that doesn't mean if you're sick, please come. That is like the opposite of what I mean. But it's not like, so my friend had like basketball tickets. And so I decided to not come to the meeting tonight because I'm going to go to the basketball game with her. No. And that's because we need to respect each other's time. So for example, for our meetings, not only are they planning, but in my coven, like the first half of the meeting is planning, and then the second half is a coven-led workshop. So one of your coven sisters put in a bunch of time to create this workshop for you. So we need to respect each other's time. Same thing with rituals. Like we all respect each other's time. Of course we understand if somebody can't make it. Of course, if somebody's sick or somebody's kid gets sick or, whatever, there's always going to be something, but it's to me in my group, like it's important that everybody comes because we are creating a thing. Like we are a family. Like you wouldn't just be like, no, it's like, you're like, oh, it's Imbolc, I should go. It's not like, oh, it's Christmas, I think I'm just going to skip it with my family. That's not really how it is. Like, because we have 8 holidays that we celebrate together and we are turning the wheel of the year together. So it all depends. In my group, we honor the Sabbats on weekends, and our outer court attends our Sabbats. Our full moon spot rituals are for inner court only. So as an inner court person, you put in, we are meeting every month for spot and like every other month for Sabbat. In addition to that, we've got monthly meetings, and the monthly meetings are 4 hours long, 2 hours of planning and social, and then 2 hours of somebody's leading a Coven workshop. And that could be on like whatever they're interested in. So that we're all constantly learning and that we're all contributing to the circle. Now, is that the same as every other group? I don't know. I have talked to people in other types of groups where attendance is completely mandatory. Completely optional. You can come. You don't have to come. Doesn't matter. But to me, it's really important because, especially as a high priestess, we put in a lot of time, a lot of energy, a lot of work into creating a ritual or to creating like a workshop. And when you miss something like that, it's a bummer to you, but like we miss you. we get sad. We want you to be there. So it all has to do with like the expectations of the individual coven. Most covens meet for Sabbats. If we're talking like Wicca witchcraft, if you are part of a heathen group or something, it might be a little bit different. But most covens meet for at least Sabbats, sometimes Espats, and every once in a while, like at least a quarterly meeting. Like we meet monthly because we want to, we plan the next Espat and the next Sabbat, and we have our workshop. So it depends, I just really think it's important as a person who is in a coven that everybody's voice is heard. Because everybody has such amazing strengths, and that's something I feel so blessed to have learned. Like, I used to feel really like when I first started, I felt like a little bit ego driven. Not like I'm the best because I'm a high priestess, but like I took everything personal. Like, oh my gosh, she's better than that at me. I must be a terrible high priestess now. Like everybody has these amazing individual strengths. So somebody might be a great writer, and somebody may be an amazing like reader, and somebody could be great at divination, and somebody can be a medium, and somebody could like make the most amazing potions ever that taste delicious. And that's the beauty of being in a coven. That's where the magic happens. You could just be in a meeting and somebody could say something that will just totally change the way that you're thinking about things, or get you out of your comfort zone. I created a workshop about spontaneous singing, opening your mouth and singing just spontaneously. And as a Virgo, there was a little bit formulaic, don't get me wrong, but the idea kind of freaked me out, and I was not the only one. So, but sitting in this circle, doing this amazing spontaneous singing with my sisters, it was so magical. Like I could do that for like 4 hours every day, like just these like call and response things that we were doing. But I did it because I wanted to get out of my comfort zone, and everybody else got out of their comfort zone, and it kind of shifted the energy. So, and like we've had poetry workshops. We have one woman, well, we have a couple amazing poets in my coven, but like, you know, we had one girl do a poetry workshop where we all worked on poetry, or I did like a rune workshop where we talked about intuitive runes, or we did like a ancestral women tarot workshop. So like there are all these different things like that are going on. And so you're not only learning what you're learning, like your sisters are teaching you some amazing things also. They're inspired to do something and they're sharing it with you. So you're getting all of these amazing experiences that you might not have received otherwise. So I'm not saying coven work is for everybody, because it might not be, but it's definitely something worthwhile to kind of at least explore. And again, if you are a latecomer and you didn't hear my hierarchical coven, like types of covens, and most covens, even if they are hierarchical, will take everybody's feelings into account, feelings and desires and interests and wants. If not, then vote with your feet. I really have to say that. I also fully believe in not being the high priestess show. I've been to rituals where it's a coven of like 14 people or something, and you could tell like not all of them showed up all the time because they don't really know where they're supposed to be looking even during the quarter calls. But like the whole time, the high priestess is doing everything. Like she might let somebody light a candle, but she's casting the circle. She's calling the quarters. She's telling you all about the ritual, and she's doing the center, and then she's doing everything. But I don't personally agree with that because I don't feel like that's enough growth for the members of the group. Excuse me. Sorry. But so yeah, it's pretty awesome. I really, really, really enjoy being in a coven. If you are interested in joining a coven, I have another blog post. So I posted the link about like how to find other witches and other pagans. But I want to also, I was ready for this. I don't know where it went. But I do have a list of questions that you can ask. I can't find it. Here we go. Okay. I'm sorry. So if you're interested in joining a coven and you're like, hey guys, like I found a coven, I'm really interested in it, I don't know what my next step is, obviously reach out to the coven, ask them if they are accepting petitions or accepting applications. Sometimes they are, sometimes they might not be. There are closed covens, like my coven right now is kind of closed. We're accepting petitions right now, but we aren't planning like our meet and greet until the end of spring because I want to make sure that our curriculum is completely set in stone before we, I want everything to be organized and there to be complete transparency and no questions. So I want to make sure our curriculum is for our new members, since we've changed, is super solid. But if you are interested in joining a coven, I suggest that you click on that link right there where it says 21 questions to ask a prospective coven. So when you're exploring all of these, covens, there are some questions that you might want to ask. Click it. So like, how are decisions made? Are they into Skyclad? Is it important that you're out of the broom closet? How is the coven funded? Do they expect people to pay dues? Is there fundraising? Is it a hybrid of that? Because turns out candles aren't free, neither are flowers, etc. If you need a crap ton of paper goods because you want to open, you want to do a public circle, like you can't expect the high priestess to, buy all of that. So where's all of that going to come from? Is everybody going to do dues or fundraising or, so check out those questions if you have an interest in joining a coven, and ask that. Many times they'll ask you if you want to, meet we've always met I mean, sometimes we'll have a meet and greet. Many times we meet individually with people, and you know, and obviously we're always happy to answer any questions. There's nothing hidden in my group. It's all about transparency and understanding expectations, like full on. Because that, I think, is the thing that leads to the downfall of many covens, is the fact that people don't understand what is expected of them. So I will basically tell them, like, you're expected to come to everything. The end. You're expected to come to every class. Yeah, crazy, I know. But you have to learn all the things. If I'm going to teach you frame drum basics in this class so that we can do a procession at the next ritual, and you aren't there, so it's not up to me. Like, I don't have another 2 hours to teach you how to use the frame drum or whatever, you know, and how to do a procession. You know, it's not going to be up to me to try to find 2 hours out of my life to like do a makeup class for you. So it's just really important that you understand, you know, the expectations. So if you do want to join a coven and you are asking them questions, make sure you ask questions about expectations. So do you have any other questions? And if you are watching the replay, you can still ask your questions, and I will respond via comment, or if it's like a question where it would be too much typing, I'll just record a video response and post it, because I've done that before. I think that's it. I think that's all I really kind of wanted to share. Like, Coven work's pretty amazing. You just have to find the right fit and the right people. And, you know, I feel super blessed to be part of the Coven family that I am part of. I cannot imagine it being any better. You know, and I've been parts of other groups, and I still I'm part of meetup groups, but being part of a Coven is very, very different. So make sure you utilize like the tools I've posted, finding other witches, that link, and 21 questions to ask a prospective coven. Let me see if there's anything else I want to share before I say goodbye. I did write a couple. If you get into those blog posts, and on the right hand side there is I think it's probably below if you're on mobile. There are different categories. One says group dynamics and coven work. You know, there are a couple interesting blog posts that you might be interested in. There's one called I'm super tired, let's circle anyway, that talks about it's just kind of like a little bit of a narrative blog post about how I'm always exhausted at full moons, but being around my Coven sisters makes me feel better and makes me want to do the things. So there are some other blog posts that you might be interested in. But stay tuned if you are interested in creating your own group. Hopefully within the next 3 to 4 months, I want to have that visioning your circle of sisters. I'm trying to think of all the things, because I have a lot of things in the hopper. Probably in the next 3 to 4 months, I'm going to have that mini course out. And I will let you know when that happens, of course. So, and I do have a one-on-one 6-month like mentorship. It's kind of like a hybrid mentoring and coaching sort of thing. So, and in that program, it is basically giving you all of the tools and preparing you to start your own coven from scratch, and like a sustainable coven, not just like, hey, people came to my house, yay coven, but like a coven that will last for 15 years. So that's it. So I hope you guys all have a lovely evening, a lovely rest of your Monday. And again, if you have any questions, post them in the comments here in the Rising Fire Tribe, and I will get back to you and answer them. Okay, bye.